Robert Bennett's fingers tightened around the crumpled note, its edges digging into his palm. "I'm gone," Emma's looping script mocked him, a final act of defiance from his wayward daughter. The private island stretched before him, a paradise turned purgatory. Lush palms swayed in the breeze, oblivious to the panic gripping the Bennett family. Lydia's voice, shrill with worry, cut through the air. "Robert, did you find anything?" He turned, watching his wife stumble across the sand, her designer sandals sinking with each step. "Nothing useful," he growled, shoving the note into his pocket. "Where's Max?" Lydia's face crumpled, searching the villa again. "God, Robert, how could this happen? It's her birthday." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken accusations. Robert's jaw clenched. "We'll find her. She can't have gone far." A figure emerged from the trailing, and for a heart-stopping moment, Robert thought it was Emma. But it was Sarah, Emma's best friend, her face flushed and hair wild. "Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett." Sarah panted, doubling over. "I checked the cove, but there's no sign of her." Robert's patience snapped. "Did you see anything unusual last night? Anything at all?" Sarah flinched at his tone. "And no, sir. We had cake, open presents." Emma seemed fine. "Fine," Lydia echoed, her voice hollow. "Our daughter doesn't vanish because she's fine, Sarah." The girl's eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say. She was acting a little weird yesterday, but I thought it was just birthday jitters." Robert's mind raced, replaying the previous day's events. Emma's demands for the perfect party, her sullen silence during dinner, the way she'd snapped at the staff. He'd chalked it up to typical teenage dramatics, but now, "Dad." Max's voice rang out from the villa. "I found something." They rushed towards a house, a sprawling masterpiece of glass and polished wood. Max stood in the doorway, clutching a small object. "It was under her bed," he said, holding out a tarnished locket. Lydia gasped. "That's not Emma's. Where did she get that?" Robert snatched it from Max's hand, examining the intricate engravings. "I've never seen this before. Max, did you notice anything else out of place in her room?" His son shook his head, eyes darting between his parents. "No, but I did find this." He produced a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "It looks like some kind of map." Sarah peered over Robert's shoulder as he unfolded it. "That's weird. Why would Emma have an old map of the island?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Robert's mind whirled with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. "We need to search the entire island now. Sarah, you're with me. Lydia, take Max and check the beaches again. And keep your eyes open for anything unusual." As they split up, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The island had seemed like the perfect getaway, a chance to celebrate Emma's birthday in style. Now, it felt like a trap. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher in the sky. Robert's shirt clung to his back, sweat stinging his eyes as he and Sarah pushed through dense foliage. "Mr. Bennett," Sarah panted, struggling to keep up. "Can we take a break? I don't think Dash." "No," he snapped, not slowing his pace. "Every minute counts. Emma could be hurt, lost, or Dash." He couldn't bring himself to finish the thought. Sarah's face hardened. Or maybe she just got sick of all this. Robert whirled on her. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Come on, Mr. Bennett. You have to see it. The constant gifts, the parties, the way you let her get away with everything. Emma's been suffocating under all that attention." His hand shot out, gripping Sarah's arm. "You don't know what you're talking about. I've given Emma everything she could ever want." "Exactly." Sarah wrenched free, her eyes flashing. "Everything except what she really needs. A father who sees her, not just her wishes." The words hit Robert like a physical blow. He staggered back, anger warring with a sudden, crushing guilt. "I've always tried to Dash." A scream pierced the air, cutting off his fumbling response. They both froze, hearts racing. "Lydia," Robert breathed, already running towards the sound. They burst from the tree line onto a small, secluded beach. Lydia stood at the water's edge, one hand pressed to her mouth. Max crouched nearby, examining something in the sand. "What happened?" Robert demanded, scanning the area for threats. Lydia pointed with a trembling finger. "Look." Half buried in the wet sand was a shoe. Emma's shoe, the ridiculous designer sandals she'd insisted on bringing to the island. And next to it, barely visible, were drag marks leading into the water. Robert's world tilted. He stumbled forward, falling to his knees beside the damning evidence. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Max's voice seemed to come from far away. "Dad, there's something else. Look at this." Robert forced himself to focus, following his son's gaze. There, etched into a nearby rock, was a crude symbol, a spiral with a line through it. "What does it mean?" Sarah asked, her earlier anger replaced by fear. Before anyone could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "It means you're all in terrible danger." They spun to see a man emerge from the trees. Weathered and lean, with wild gray hair, he looked like he'd stepped out of a shipwrecked tale. "Who are you?" Robert demanded, pushing to his feet. The man's eyes were sad, almost pitying. "My name is Paul Fields. I'm the caretaker of this island. Or at least, I was." Lydia gasped. "But you're supposed to be dead. They told us Dash." Paul's laugh was bitter. "They told you what they wanted you to believe, just like they've been doing for years." Robert's patience snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing Paul by the shirt. "Where is my daughter? What have you done with Emma?" Paul didn't resist, his gaze steady. "I haven't done anything to her, Mr. Bennett, but I'm afraid Emma has stumbled into something far beyond her understanding, something that's been waiting on this island for a very long time." Max stepped forward, holding out the map. "Is this what you're talking about? We found it in Emma's room." Paul's eyes widened at the sight of the paper. "Where did she get that?" "Never mind. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that your daughter has set something in motion that can't be stopped. Unless..." "Unless what?" Lydia demanded, her voice cracking. Paul looked at each of them in turn, his expression grave. "Unless you're willing to face the truth about this island, about yourselves, and about the price of the life you've been living." Robert's grip on Paul's shirt tightened. "Stop speaking in riddles, old man. Tell us where Emma is." "I can't tell you where she is," Paul said calmly, "but I can show you where she's gone, if you're brave enough to follow." A tense silence fell over the group. Robert's mind raced, weighing the risks against the desperate need to find his daughter. Finally, he released Paul with a shove. "Fine," he growled. "Show us. But I'm warning you, if anything's happened to Emma Dash." Paul's smile was sad. "Mr. Bennett, I'm afraid something's already happened. To all of you. You just don't know it yet." As they followed Paul into the dense undergrowth, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a threshold. Whatever lay ahead, he knew with grim certainty that their lives would never be the same. The jungle seemed to close in around them, the air growing thick and oppressive. Lydia stumbled, and Robert caught her arm, steadying her. Their eyes met, a lifetime of unspoken words passing between them. "Robert," she whispered, What if we don't find her?" He squeezed her hand, pushing down his own fear. "We will. We have to." Max forged ahead, his earlier reluctance replaced by determination. "Look," he called back, pointing to a barely visible path. "There are footprints here, fresh ones." Sarah knelt to examine them, her face pale. "They're Emma's size. But there's something wrong with the way they're spaced, like she was running or being chased." The words sent a chill through the group. Robert turned to Paul, who had been watching their reactions with a mix of pity and resignation. "You know more than you're telling us," Robert accused. "What exactly are we walking into?" Paul sighed, leaning heavily on a gnarled walking stick. "Mr. Bennett, have you ever wondered why this island was so cheap? Why no one else wanted to develop it? I assumed it was the isolation, the difficulty of building here." "Partly," Paul nodded, "but there's more to it. This island has a history, Mr. Bennett. A dark one, People have been disappearing here for centuries. Always the wealthy, always those who thought they could buy paradise. Lydia's grip on Robert's hand tightened. What are you saying? That some curse took our daughter. Paul's laugh was hollow. Curse, judgment, karma. Call it what you will. But the island has a way of balancing the scales. Your Emma, I'm afraid, has become part of that balance. Robert's temper flared. This is insane. We're wasting time with ghost stories when we should be dash. A scream cut through the air, high and terrified. Emma's scream. Emma. Lydia cried, already running towards the sound. They crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping at their faces. Robert's heart pounded, every instinct screaming at him to reach his daughter. They burst into a small clearing, and Robert's world tilted on its axis. There, in the center, stood Emma, but wasn't the pampered, pouting girl who had demanded this island getaway. This Emma was different. Wild-eyed, her clothes torn and muddy, she clutched something to her chest. Emma, Robert breathed, taking a step forward. Sweetheart, are you okay? Her eyes locked onto him, and Robert flinched at the accusation he saw there. Stay back, she hissed. All of you. You don't understand what's happening here. Lydia pushed past Robert, her arms outstretched. Emma, please. We've been so worried. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Just come home. Emma's laugh was bitter, so unlike the carefree girl they knew. Home. You think that mansion is home. You have no idea what real life is like, what real people go through every day while we wallow in our privilege. Sarah stepped forward, her voice gentle. Em, what happened to you? What did you find? Emma's grip tightened on the object she held, an old, leather-bound book. The truth, she spat, about this island, about all of us, and I won't let you bury it again. Paul's voice cut through the tension. She's read the journal, he said quietly. She knows everything now. Robert whirled on him. What journal? What the hell is going on here? But before Paul could answer, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. A low rumble filled the air, growing louder by the second. No, Paul whispered, his face ashen. It's too soon. The island. It's dash. The earth split open with a deafening crack. Robert lunged for Emma, but she danced away, her eyes wild. Don't you see? She screamed over the chaos. This is our punishment for everything we've taken, everything we've ignored. As the ground continued to shake, trees toppling around them, Robert met his daughter's gaze. In that moment, he saw not the spoiled child he'd raised, but stranger. A girl forced to grow up too fast, carrying the weight of a truth he couldn't begin to understand. Emma, please, he begged, reaching out once more. Whatever's happening, we'll face it together. Just come back to us. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a flicker of the old Emma in her eyes. But then the moment passed, and she turned away. It's too late, Dad, she said, her voice barely audible over the rumbling earth. We can't go back. Not anymore. As darkness swallowed the clearing and the ground gave way beneath them, Robert's last thought was of the life they'd left behind. The carefully crafted illusion of perfection, now crumbling like the very island beneath their feet. In that final moment, as his family's screams filled the air, Robert Bennett realized the true cost of the paradise he'd bought. And he knew, with grim certainty, that their real trial was only just beginning. The island's lush beauty had turned sinister, shadows stretching like grasping fingers across the once idyllic beach. Paul Field stood before the Bennett family, his weathered face a map of secrets and regret. You don't understand what you've stumbled into, Paul's voice rasped. This island, it has a way of exposing truths we'd rather keep buried. Robert's fists clenched at his sides. Enough riddles. What happened to my daughter? Paul's eyes flickered to the tree-line. Years ago, another girl vanished here, just like Emma. We never found her body. Lydia's gasp cut through the air. What are you saying? I'm saying history has a nasty habit of repeating itself, Paul replied, especially when people refuse to learn from it. Max stepped forward, the tattered map clutched in his hand. Is that why these markings are here? They're connected to the disappearances. Paul's gaze sharpened. Where did you get that? Found it in a shelter near the beach, Max said. What does it mean? Before Paul could answer, Robert lunged forward, grabbing the old man's shirt. Enough games. If you know where Emma is dash. Robert, stop. Lydia cried, pulling at his arm. This isn't helping. He released Paul with a shove, chest heaving. Then, what do you suggest? Our daughter is missing. Possibly dash. He couldn't finish the thought. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. We need to keep searching. Emma's out there somewhere. Paul straightened his shirt, eyes never leaving Robert. Your friend is right, but be warned. The deeper you dig, the more dangerous this island becomes. As if on cue, a distant rumble echoed across the sky. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, turning the paradise into a brooding hellscape. We should head back to the villa, Lydia said, wrapping her arms around herself. Regroup, come up with a plan. Robert nodded, his earlier rage giving way to a bone-deep weariness. Fine, but you're coming with us, he said to Paul. I want answers. The group trudged back through the jungle, the air thick with unspoken accusations and fear. Max lagged behind, studying the map intently. Inside the villa, the oppressive silence was broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Lydia paced the living room, her designer outfit now rumpled and stained. This is all my fault, she whispered. I should have been stricter with her. Should have dash. Don't, Robert cut her off. We both spoiled her, but that doesn't explain this. Sarah perched on the edge of a chair, her earlier bravado crumbling. I should have said something sooner. Emma was acting weird for days before we came here. Secretive. I thought she was just excited about her birthday, but now... Paul's laugh was bitter. Oh, she found something to be excited about, all right. Just not what any of you expected. Robert rounded on him. Explain, now. The old man sighed, suddenly looking every one of his years. This island has a history of drawing people in. The wealthy, the privileged, those who think they can buy a slice of paradise. What does that have to do with Emma? Max asked, looking up from the map. Everything, Paul replied. Your sister, she found something. Something that's been hidden here for generations. A truth about the cost of all this luxury. A door slammed somewhere in the house, making everyone jump. Sarah yelped. What was that? Probably just the wind, Lydia said, but her voice trembled. Robert strode to the window, peering out into the gathering gloom. This is insane. We need to call for help. Get a search party dash. No one's coming. Paul interrupted. The storm will make sure of that. We're on our own. The lights flickered ominously, casting strange shadows across the room. Max's voice was barely audible. Dad, look at this. He held out the map, pointing to a series of symbols near the center of the island. I think I know where Emma might have gone. Robert snatched the map, studying it intently. What are these markings? Cave systems, Paul said, his expression grim, running all through the island. If Emma found one of the entrances. Lydia's face paled. We have to go after her, now. Robert nodded, already moving towards the door. Paul, you're coming with us. You know this island better than anyone. The old man hesitated. Mr. Bennett, you don't understand the danger dash. I don't care. Robert roared. That's my daughter out there. Now move. They ventured out into the storm, wind whipping at their faces. Max led the way, following the crude map as best he could. The jungle seemed to close in around them, branches clawing at their clothes. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled, crying out in pain. My ankle. I think I twisted it. Lydia knelt beside her, examining the swollen joint. You can't go on like this. We need to get you back to the villa. Robert's face twisted with indecision. We can't split up. It's too dangerous. I'll take her back, Max offered. You and Mom keep searching with Paul. Before Robert could protest, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the trees. Everyone froze, hearts pounding. Emma. Lydia whispered, her voice choked with fear. Paul's face had gone ashen. No, it can't be. Not again. Robert grabbed him by the collar. What do you mean? Not again. Why aren't you telling us? The old man's eyes were wild with terror. The island, it's awakening. We're too late. As if in response, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Trees swayed dangerously, and in the distance, they heard the ominous crack of splintering wood. Run! Paul yelled, already sprinting through the underbrush. They scrambled after him, branches whipping at their faces. Sarah hobbled along, supported by Max. The earth heaved and buckled, threatening to swallow them whole. Suddenly, Robert spotted a dark opening in the rock face ahead. There, a cave. They dove inside just as a massive tree came crashing down behind them. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by the occasional flash of lightning from the cave's mouth. Panting heavily, Robert fumbled for his phone, activating the flashlight. The beam illuminated a vast cavern, its walls slick with moisture. Is everyone all right? Lydia asked, her voice echoing strangely. A chorus of affirmatives answered her, but Paul remained ominously silent. Paul. Robert swung the light towards where the old man had been standing. Where are you? But Paul Fields had vanished, swallowed by the darkness of the cave. This is impossible, Sarah whispered. He was right behind us. Max's voice was tight with fear. Dad, look at this. Robert turned, following his son's gaze. There, carved into the cave wall, was a familiar symbol, the same spiral with a line through it they'd seen on the beach. What does it mean? Lydia asked, reaching out to trace the etching. Before anyone could answer, a low rumble filled the air. The ground beneath their feet began to shift and crack. We need to move. Robert yelled, grabbing Lydia's hand. Deeper into the cave. Now. They stumbled forward, the beam of Robert's phone casting wild shadows as the earth continued to shake. The passage narrowed, forcing them to move single file. Suddenly, Max called out from the rear. Wait, I see something. Robert turned, shining the light back. There, half hidden behind a fallen boulder, was a small opening. It looks like some kind of hidden room, Max said, already squeezing through the gap. Max, wait! Lydia cried, but it was too late. They had no choice but to follow, contorting their bodies to fit through the narrow space. As they emerged on the other side, Robert's breath caught in his throat. The chamber before them was filled with artifacts, ancient-looking pottery, weathered journals, and strange, carved figurines. But it was a far wall that drew their attention. A massive mural stretched from floor to ceiling, depicting scenes of wealth and opulence giving way to destruction and ruin. And there, at the center of it all, was a familiar face. Oh my God, Lydia whispered. It's Emma. The painting showed their daughter, her features unmistakable, standing atop a pile of gold and jewels. But her eyes were hollow, filled with another worldly light. What is this place? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Max had already moved to a nearby table, rifling through a stack of journals. These are records, he said, flipping through the pages. Going back centuries, all about the island and the people who came here. Robert joined him, scanning the entries. His blood ran cold as he read account after account of wealthy families vanishing without a trace. It's all here, he muttered. Everything Paul was talking about. The island's curse, the price of paradise. Lydia's scream shattered the moment. Robert whirled to see her pointing at the mural, her face white with terror. The painted Emma had moved, her arm now outstretched towards them. As they watched, frozen in disbelief, her lips began to move. A whisper filled the chamber, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You can't escape the truth, Emma's voice echoed. None of us can. The ground beneath their feet began to shake once more violently than before. Cracks spiderwebbed across the floor, and dust rained down from the ceiling. We have to get out of here, Robert yelled, grabbing Max's arm. Now, they scrambled for the exit, but the opening had sealed shut, leaving them trapped in the rapidly collapsing chamber. As the walls crumbled around them, Robert met Lydia's terrified gaze. In that moment, he saw the weight of their choices, the true cost of the life they'd built. The last thing he heard before darkness claimed him was Emma's voice, soft and sad. "I'm sorry, Dad, but it's time to wake up." Darkness enveloped the Bennetts as the cave-in sealed their fate. Dust choked the air, and the rumble of shifting earth drowned out their coughs and gasps. Robert's phone flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows across the chamber's crumbling walls. "Is everyone okay?" Robert's voice cracked, thick with fear and grit. Lydia's hand found his in the gloom. "I'm here, Max." "Sarah." A groan answered from nearby. "Over here," Max called. "Sarah's hurt. Her ankle's worse." Robert swung the light towards his son's voice. Max cradled Sarah's head in his lap, her face pale and streaked with dirt. "We need to get out of here," Lydia said, her eyes wild in the beam of light. "There has to be another way." Robert's jaw clenched. Paul knew about this place. He led us here on purpose. "Dad, look." Max pointed to a far corner of the chamber. "There's something carved into the wall." They stumbled over fallen debris, Robert's light revealing a series of intricate symbols etched into the stone. At the center was a familiar spiral, the same one they'd seen on the beach. "It's a map," Max breathed, tracing the lines with his finger. "These tunnels, they lead deeper into the island." Sarah struggled to sit up, wincing. "You can't be serious. We need to find a way back to the surface." Robert's mind raced. "No, Max is right. Emma must have found these passages. It's our only lead." Lydia's grip on his arm tightened. "Robert, it's too dangerous. We don't know what's down there." He met her gaze, seeing his own fear reflected. "We don't have a choice. It's this or wait to suffocate." With grim determination, they helped Sarah to her feet. Max supported her weight as they navigated the treacherous path deeper into the earth. The air grew thick and oppressive, carrying the scent of decay and something older, more primal. Hours seemed to pass as they wound through the labyrinthine tunnels. Robert's phone battery dwindled, casting ever weaker light on their path. Just as despair began to set in, they emerged into a vast cavern. "Oh my God," Lydia whispered. Before them stretched an underground lake, its black surface mirror-smooth. Stone pillars rose from the depths, carved with the same symbols they'd seen throughout the island. And there, on the far shore, a flicker of firelight. "Emma." Robert called, his voice echoing across the water. The flame guttered, then grew brighter. A figure emerged from the shadows, but it wasn't their daughter. Paul Fields stood before them, his weathered face illuminated by a burning torch. "I warned you," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Some truths are better left buried." Robert lunged forward, rage boiling over. "Where is she? What have you done with Emma?" Paul didn't flinch. "I haven't done anything. The island. It has its own will, its own justice." "Stop speaking in riddles." Lydia cried. "Our daughter is missing." Paul's eyes softened. "Is she? Or has she finally found what she's been searching for?" Before they could respond, a new voice cut through the cavern. "Mom, Dad." They turned as one, hearts pounding. There, emerging from a hidden passage, stood Emma. But she was changed. Gone was the petulant, spoiled girl they'd known. This Emma stood tall, her eyes clear and filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "Emma." Lydia rushed forward, enveloping her daughter in a crushing embrace. "We've been so worried. What happened to you?" Emma gently disentangled herself, her gaze sweeping over her family. "I found the truth. About this island. About us." Robert stepped closer, studying his daughter's face. "What are you talking about?" Emma's smile was sad. "Dad, don't you see? This place. It's not just an island. It's a mirror. It shows us who we really are." Max limped forward, still supporting Sarah. "The journal I found. It was yours, wasn't it?" Emma nodded. "I discovered it the first night we were here. It belonged to a girl who disappeared decades ago. She uncovered the island's secret, just like I did." "What secret?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma turned, gesturing to the cavern around them. "This place has power. Real power. It's been drawing people here for centuries, the wealthy, the privileged, those who think they can buy happiness." Paul's gravelly voice joined in. "And it shows them the cost of that belief, the true price of paradise." Robert's mind reeled. "This is insane. Emma, we need to leave. Now." But Emma stood her ground. "We can't, Dad. Not until you understand. Not until you see what I've seen." The cavern began to shift around them, the black water of the lake rippling with unseen currents. Images flickered across its surface. Scenes from their lives, moments of selfishness and greed played out in stark relief. Lydia gasped, covering her mouth. That's the day The day you turned your back on your sister," Emma finished. "Because her struggles didn't fit into your perfect life." Robert watched in horror as his own misdeeds were laid bare. Business deals built on lies, relationships discarded for profit. "Stop this," he growled. "It's some kind of trick." Emma's eyes flashed. Is it the truth you've been running from all these years?" The images swirled faster, a dizzying kaleidoscope of their worst moments. Sarah sank to her knees, overwhelmed. Even Max, usually so stoic, looked shaken. "Why are you doing this?" Lydia pleaded. "Emma, please. We came here to save you." Emma's laugh was hollow. "Save me? From what?" "From finally seeing clearly." The cavern shuddered, rocks tumbling from the ceiling. Paul's voice cut through the chaos. "The island is collapsing. We don't have much time." Robert grabbed Emma's arm. "We're leaving. Now. I don't care about any of this mystical nonsense." But Emma wrenched free. "You still don't get it, do you? We can't leave until we face the truth. Until we make amends." The ground beneath their feet began to crack, fissures spreading across the stone. Water from the lake seeped through, rising rapidly. "Emma, please," Max begged. "We'll drown if we stay." For a moment, doubt flickered across Emma's face. Then her resolve hardened. "There's one way out, but it requires sacrifice." Paul nodded grimly. "The island demands a price, a true acknowledgement of your sins." Robert's world narrowed to a pinpoint. The water lapped at their ankles, then their knees. His family, his whole world, teetered on the brink of destruction. And it was his fault, all of it. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words torn from his soul. I've been so blind, so selfish." Lydia joined in, tears streaming down her face. "We both have, Emma, Max. We've failed you. We've failed ourselves." One by one, they poured out their regrets, their shame laid bare in the rising flood. Even Sarah, choking back sobs, confessed to years of resentment and jealousy. As the last words faded, the cavern grew still. The water, which had reached their chests, began to recede. A soft light bloomed from the lake's center, illuminating a previously hidden passage. "The way out," Paul murmured. "You've earned it." They stumbled towards the opening, exhausted and shell-shocked. But as they reached the threshold, Emma hesitated. "I can't leave," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not yet. There's more work to be done here." Robert's heart clenched. "Emma, no. We're not leaving you behind." She smiled, touching his cheek. "You're not leaving me, Dad. You're letting me grow. I'll find my way back when I'm ready." Tears streamed down Lydia's face. "Promise me. Promise you'll come home." Emma hugged her mother fiercely. "I promise. But home won't be the same. None of us will." With a final, tearful embrace, they watched as Emma retreated into the cavern shadows. Paul nodded to them, a silent guardian of the island's secrets. "Go," he said, "before the passage closes." They stumbled through the opening, emerging onto a moonlit beach. The storm had passed, leaving the night air crisp and clear. As they collapsed onto the sand, the reality of what they'd experienced began to sink in. Robert gazed out at the dark waters, his world forever altered. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Max's hand found his shoulder. "We start over, Dad. We do better." As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the Bennett family huddled together on the shore. They were battered, broken, and forever changed. But for the first time in years, they were truly together. And somewhere deep within the island's heart, Emma Bennett continued her journey of discovery, guided by the ancient power that had brought them all to this moment of reckoning. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped the Bennett family for what felt like an eternity. Robert stood at the edge of the beach, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the island loomed, a silent sentinel guarding its secrets. "We can't leave her there," Lydia's voice cracked, her hand trembling as she clutched Robert's arm. Max limped towards them, supporting Sarah. "Mom, you heard Emma. She made her choice." Robert's jaw clenched. "No, I'm not abandoning my daughter again." A rustle in the nearby foliage made them all turn. Paul emerged, his weathered face etched with lines of worry. "You don't understand the forces at work here," Paul warned. "The island, it's not finished with you yet." Robert lunged forward, grabbing Paul by the shirt. "Enough riddles. Tell us everything, now." Paul didn't resist. His eyes, filled with a mixture of fear and resignation, swept over the group. "The island has been here for centuries, drawing in the wealthy, the privileged. It shows them the truth about themselves, about the cost of their ambition." "But why?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Paul's laugh was bitter. "Balance. The universe demands it. For every action, a reaction. For every fortune made, a price paid." Lydia stepped forward, her face set with determination. "I don't care about cosmic balance. I want my daughter back." A low rumble shook the ground, and dark clouds began to gather over the island. Paul's eyes widened. "It's starting. The final test." "Test? What test?" Max demanded. Before Paul could answer, a piercing scream cut through the air. Emma's scream. Robert didn't hesitate. He plunged into the surf, swimming towards the island with powerful strokes. The others followed, Paul's warnings lost in the crash of waves. They staggered onto the shore, soaked and gasping. The island's lush vegetation had withered, leaving behind a landscape of twisted, blackened trees. At the center, a pillar of swirling darkness rose into the sky. "Emma." Lydia cried out, her voice swallowed by the howling wind. They pressed forward, fighting against the gale. As they neared the pillar, ghostly images flickered in its depths. Scenes from their lives played out, moments of greed, selfishness, and cruelty laid bare. Robert watched himself ignore Max's science fair, too busy closing a deal. Lydia turned away from her sister's plea for help, ashamed of her family's struggles. Sarah saw herself manipulating friends, using them to climb the social ladder. "Stop it!" Max shouted, covering his ears. "This isn't real." Paul's voice cut through the chaos. "It's all real. Every moment, every choice. The island doesn't lie." The images shifted, focusing now on Emma. They watched her transformation, from a spoiled, entitled girl to someone grappling with the weight of her privilege. In the final scene, Emma stood at the heart of the darkness, her eyes closed in concentration. "She's trying to control it," Paul breathed, awe in his voice. "She's facing the island's power head-on." Robert surged forward, reaching out to his daughter. "Emma, we're here. Come back to us." Emma's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. "Dad, Mom, what are you doing here?" Lydia pushed through the wind. "We came for you, sweetheart. We're not leaving without you." Emma's face contorted with effort. "You don't understand. I have to finish this. I have to make things right." "No, Emma," Max called out. "This isn't your burden to bear alone." Sarah stepped forward, her earlier fear replaced by determination. "We all have to face our mistakes. Together." The darkness pulsed, tendrils of shadow lashing out. Robert felt an icy grip on his heart, images of his worst deeds flashing before his eyes. But he pushed through, reaching for Emma's hand. "I'm sorry," he choked out, "for everything. For not seeing you, for valuing success over family. I was wrong, Emma. So wrong." Lydia joined him, tears streaming down her face. "We both were, but we can change. We can do better." One by one, they confessed their faults, their regrets laid bare before the island's judgment. With each admission, the darkness receded slightly. Emma's eyes cleared, the unearthly glow fading. "I can feel it weakening, but it's not enough." Paul stepped forward, his face grave. "There's only one way to end this. The island demands a sacrifice, a life freely given." Robert's heart clenched. "Take me. Let the others go." "No," Lydia cried. "We do this together or not all." The family huddled close, facing the swirling vortex of darkness. As one, they stepped forward, ready to pay whatever price was demanded. But before they could take another step, Sarah broke free. "Wait, it should be me." "Sarah, no." Emma reached for her friend. Sarah's smile was sad. "I've spent my whole life taking, using people. It's time I gave something back." Before anyone could stop her, Sarah plunged into the heart of the darkness. There was a blinding flash, a scream that seemed to come from the island itself, and then silence. The vortex collapsed in on itself, taking Sarah with it. Where it had stood, a single white flower bloomed, its petals untouched by the devastation around it. Emma fell to her knees, sobbing. The others gathered around her, their own grief mingling with a sense of awe at Sarah's sacrifice. Paul's voice was soft. "It's over. The island's power is broken." As if in response, the withered landscape began to transform. Green shoots pushed through the scorched earth, and leaves unfurled on blackened branches. Life returned to the island in a rush of color and sound. They made their way back to the beach in stunned silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they reached the shore, they found a small boat waiting, its origin a mystery. "How do we go back?" Lydia asked, her voice hollow. "How do we explain any of this?" Robert squeezed her hand. "We tell the truth, about everything." The journey back to the mainland was surreal, the horrors of the island fading like a half-remembered nightmare. As they approached the dock, they saw a figure waiting, Officer Jake Reynolds, his face a mask of concern. "Mr. Bennett, we've been searching for you for days. What happened out there?" Robert met the officer's gaze, his voice steady. "It's a long story, officer. One that's going to take some time to tell." In the weeks that followed, the Bennett family's story rocked their community. The truth about the island, about Sarah's sacrifice, about their own transformation, it all came out. There were investigations, endless questions, and more than a few who doubted their sanity. But through it all, the family stood united. Robert stepped down from his company, dedicating his resources to charitable causes. Lydia reconnected with her estranged sister, working to mend the bridges she'd burned. Max found his voice, speaking out against the excesses of wealth and privilege. And Emma, she emerged as a beacon of change, using her platform to challenge the very system that had shaped her. Her story inspired others, sparking a movement of young people determined to confront the darker aspects of inherited wealth. 1 year to the day after their ordeal, the Bennett family gathered on a quiet stretch of beach. Emma clutched a familiar leather-bound journal, its pages filled with the island's secrets. "I've been thinking," she said, her eyes on the horizon, "about what all this meant. Why us? Why now?" Max smiled, a hint of his old cynicism creeping in. "Maybe we were just in the right place at the wrong time." Lydia shook her head. "No, I think it was more than that. We needed this. All of us." Robert nodded, his arm around his wife. A wake-up call, a chance to see ourselves clearly, maybe for the first time. Emma opened the journal to its final page, where a single sentence was written in flowing script. The true treasure lies not in what we possess, but in who we become. She smiled, a mixture of sadness and hope in her eyes. Sarah understood that, in the end. She gave us a second chance. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the Bennett family stood together. They were no longer the people who had stepped onto that island a year ago. They were stronger, wiser, and infinitely more grateful for the bonds that tied them together. Emma closed the journal, her voice soft but determined. "So what do we do now?" Robert looked at his family, seeing them truly for the first time. "We live, Emma. We remember. And we do better every single day." As they turned to leave, a warm breeze carried the scent of tropical flowers. For a moment, just a moment, they could have sworn they heard Sarah's laughter on the wind, a final reminder of the price paid and the lessons learned on that fateful island.